The recent Texas Senate bill that aimed to erase the historical contributions of women, people of color, indigenous people, well, that bill that was already pretty bad just got worse. It was worse than we thought. Turns out the bill that would drop some 24 curriculum requirements in the state of Texas in K through 12 schools, such as, of course, Martin Luther King Jr.'s very important I Have a Dream speech, the works of United Farm Workers leader Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony's writings about the women's suffragist movement, and Native American history or indigenous history, will also drop the requirement that teachers illustrate why white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan are morally wrong. So they no longer have to teach that, oh, by the way, the Klan was wrong. Oh, it also, of course, eliminates the requirement that the institution of slavery and the eugenics movement be taught as being morally wrong as well. So there we go. Yeah, worse than I previously reported. Damn. Here we go. And of course, as if Texas couldn't go low enough. Of course, now you can't even teach that white supremacy is bad, or that slavery also bad, which should be fairly obvious. But again, as I'm about to explain, there are people who think that that kind of thing is absolutely acceptable. I know, Jeff. You must be thinking, come on, man. You're not thinking actually that, Republicans in Texas, because that's who runs Texas, you're not saying that they would gladly return to the days of slavery. I mean, after all, it was, Abraham Lincoln, a Republican who freed the slaves, and really it's the Democrats who want to reinstitute slavery. Yeah, right. No, here's the thing. We already have a pretty close modern equivalent to slavery. It's actually modern mass incarceration. And of course, contracting workers who are incarcerated in the prison system to basically do free labor for corporations. In fact, here's the thing. You might be wondering, well, hold on. Slavery is illegal. How is that modern slavery? Well, to be fair, the 13th Amendment does actually allow for something called involuntary servitude, which is as bad as what you think. Now, the reason that they can get away with it is because, well, that involuntary servitude is in the context of the penal system. And so here's what the 13th Amendment says. As punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted shall exist that involuntary servitude within the United States or any place subject to jurisdiction. Not only that, but you have the American Labor Laws, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, that includes those incarcerated from those guidelines against, basically involuntary servitude or slavery, by classifying their working relationship as penal and not economic. So the result is you get a bunch of people in jail, you incarcerate a bunch of people, maybe pass some bullshit laws, and get a bunch of people in jail, for example, doing like the drug war. And hey, guess what? You've got this gigantic pool of people that you can now have have committed to involuntary servitude for corporate for corporations. And so, yeah. And so people in jail have no protection from forced labor. And as I mentioned before, and I'll get into more detail about this, of course, the war on drugs has created a situation where you have people who are nonviolent offenders that, have possession, or they get arrested for possession. And of course, black people tend to go to prison more often for the same crimes as white people. And so you have generally more black people than any other demographic going to prison for nonviolent crimes such as that. And they end up getting into this involuntary servitude on behalf of a corporation that gets paid basically peanuts to do this job, which is essentially the equivalent of modern day slavery. And then, of course, here you have the impetus for doing that, these corporations, and why they go along with this, what is basically slavery, is that you have these workers, this entire workforce, that'll work for nothing. And that displaces regular workers who would actually demand fair working conditions and a fair wage, and it saves that corporation billions of dollars. And because of state contracts with private prison corporations, they make money off, those corporations make money off incarcerating the nonviolent drug offenders, and then further make money off contracting those nonviolent offenders out to other for-profit corporations. So everybody's making money here except for regular people. The worker gains essentially nothing, and he's in prison. I don't know, man. That sounds like slavery to me. You know, I mean, and guess what? Republicans happen to be massively in favor of this. In fact, the United States is one of the largest, probably the largest prison population of the United States per capita as a share of course, its citizens. And so Republicans love this. In fact, back in February of 2017, after the Obama administration actually did something positive. So now the Obama administration, throughout most of it, was still absolutely fine with contracting private for-profit, prison corporations, Geo Group and Core Civic, right? Well, basically, about the end of his term, Obama said, okay, we're not going to federally contract these anymore. Okay, so no more of these private prisons, at least working for the federal government. Trump gets into office, and immediately, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions revokes that initiative to phase out the use of private contractors to run federal prisons. And the result of that, of course, is, well, not only do our private prisons back baby, but not only that, but their stock skyrocketed. And so, yeah, they are back in business, and again, perpetuating the modern form of slavery. And of course, you have Republicans in states that are now passing laws to criminalize protests, like the Black Lives Matter protests. And so, yes, as a result, guess what? Republicans actually love slavery. They rigged the system to ensure that we get as close to bringing back slavery as we can, without violating, of course, the 14th Amendment. And so, or was it the 13th? Either way, pretty terrible. And not only that, but we have also seen the return of debtors' prisons under Republicans too. And so that's something to consider. Basically, it is anything to keep black people, black Americans down, and more importantly, white men at the top. Remember, we are not that far removed from civil rights and the terror campaigns of the KKK back in the 60s. And under Obama and then Trump, of course, you saw a gigantic resurgence of emboldening of racist hate groups, first as a result of a black man winning the presidency, and then, of course, as a president who echoed white nationalist and white supremacist talking points. Add to that, of course, the erasure of people of color and their achievements and their contribution to this country, and the outrage generated by actually trying to teach the real history of this country through things like critical race theory. And so it's pretty clear, Republicans that are doing their damnedest to try to erase that history, to not talk about what's going on in the past, in the hopes that we actually repeat that past in our future. They are the party of white grievance at this point. And this is, of course, one of the more brazen attempts under the guise of trying not to teach a perspective. Oh, no, we can't teach perspective. It's just like some of those free speech absolutist people that you see on the right understand that they don't actually care about free speech. It's actually about being able to say the N-word without consequences, or to attack indigenous people or women or trans people. It's basically about being open about hate and not getting consequences to your speech. Again, I do believe in free speech. I don't think the government should come in and shut anybody down for anything that they say. But I do believe that speech, if you say something and that offends people, those people should be able to say, hey, that's some bullshit. I'm just saying. And so, Also, by the way, you also have white nationalist groups, white supremacist groups, basically using the situation to recruit people to their interests, which of course means supporting mainly like secession or white ethno-states or racist policies, things like that. So understand that this is part of that. Know it for what it is. It's part of a much larger plan to roll back civil rights. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.